Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. There's a lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide.
Koinant, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world, and welcome to tonight's double header. Yeah, it's a double header. We're going to be having Scott on at 8. And that we're then going to follow up with Ramaphosa when he goes live with his speech. And once his speech is over, Scott and I will be talking about that. So, it's going to be quite an evening. Right, now, let's get on to the subject at hand, which is Scott Tungay. Tonight we meet Scott Tungay. Before entering into a discussion about his views on what is happening in South Africa, current affairs and politics, we'll be talking about his life growing up in the Drakensberg, which is a place I know very, very well. Tonight we'll also be auctioning this lovely painting. Let me show it to you. Give me a second, guys. Here we go. Now, let me tell you about this painting. The artist is Roelof Rousseau. The title is Beautiful Desolation of the Great Karoo. Size is 66 centimeters by 91 centimeters. The retail price is 29,500 Rand, but the reserve price is just 19,000 Rand. However, having said that, we're going to start the bidding at just 5,000 Rand. So it's an absolute steal. To place a bid, just say painting and the Rand amount in the side chat. I will ask Marlena to monitor all bids during the live stream. All money goes to Boere Legion charity. Now, before bringing Scott on, let me just show you what the Drakensberg looks like, guys. It is absolutely stunning. This is a video I took about 8 years ago in the Drakensberg. Get it going.
This is early morning at Champagne Castle, and this is a view from our room. The sun hasn't quite reached the mountain yet, but you can see it silhouetted in the morning light.
Okay, that gives you a bit of an idea of what the Drakensberg is all about. Absolutely beautiful. I'll just show you some more footage of that as well, just so you can get it when it's actually a bit lighter. Here we are. Look at that.
So peaceful. Just the birds. No traffic. Only my voice.
Alrighty, there you go. Now, I'm going to get Scott on so that we can start our chat. I see that Ramaphosa might be here shortly, but I don't see him on yet. Let me get Scott on. Hi, Scott.
Yeah. Hello, Scott. How you doing?
Excellent, buddy. Excellent. I've got
Good.
Ramaphosa in the background here, so if he comes on, we'll cross to him, and then we'll talk about what he says after.
Awesome. How you doing?
Excellent, mate. Excellent. And we're going to be auctioning a painting tonight as well, so I'm just going to stick that up on the side of your face. Don't worry, it doesn't cover you in any way. But people are able to bid for this, and the money goes directly to charity. It's one of the charities that we support. Oh, and by the way, just before we get started, Patrick, happy birthday, mate. Patrick's one of our channel heroes, and it's his birthday today. Right, now, let's get started. You grew up in the Drakensberg, at a place called the Drakensberg. Oh, here comes Ramaphosa.
This will improve our management.
Okay, I'm going to cross to him. We'll talk to him. Okay. Cheers, mate. I'll keep you on the background on Skype.
Since the start of the outbreak, there's been 80,412 confirmed coronavirus cases in South Africa. Of these, 44,331 people, or around 55%, have recovered. That means there are currently 34,407 active cases in the country. Yet, as we know, the cost in human lives could have been far higher than that. We took a decisive decision early in the development of the disease in South Africa to restrict international travel and gatherings with the declaration of a national state of disaster, and subsequently imposed a nationwide lockdown to slow the transmission of the virus. In doing so, we aimed to flatten the curve of the infection so that our health system would be better placed to care for the large number of people who would be needing care. As a result of the decisive action that we took then, and particularly through your cooperation, your determination, and your sacrifice as a nation, we have succeeded in delaying the spread of the virus. One of the ways of measuring the rate of transmission is what is called doubling time. This is the number of days it takes for the total number of cases to double in number. In the 3 weeks prior to the implementation of the nationwide lockdown, the number of infections was doubling every 2 days. During level 5 of the lockdown, this doubling time increased to 15 days, which meant that it took much longer for the virus to spread. The doubling time has been at around 12 days during levels 4 and 3. We used the time during the lockdown to prepare and enhance our health system and put in place public health measures to minimize infections. The work to strengthen our health system, which includes establishing well over 100 quarantine centers, increasing the number of intensive care units and beds in field hospitals, and identifying additional health personnel, continues across all our provinces. But while we have used the lockdown to start to flatten the curve, this task is far from complete. Even after 100 days, we are still near the beginning of this epidemic, and it will remain with us, as I've said before, for many more months and possibly years. The task of dealing with coronavirus pandemic is like running a marathon race and not a sprint. And we have therefore had to shape our response according to that reality. Over the last few weeks, the number of infections have been rising rapidly. Nearly a third of all confirmed cases have been recorded in the last week alone, and more than half of all confirmed cases have been recorded over the last 2 weeks. The Western Cape has so far been hardest hit by the disease, accounting for about 60% of infections across the country. While community transmission has remained low across most of the country for the past 9 weeks, it has been rising rapidly in that province, the Western Cape. There are indications that transmission in the Eastern Cape is now starting to rise and may just be a few weeks behind the Western Cape. For many of us, what was once a distant disease is now coming much closer. More and more of us now know someone who is infected, whether at work or school or in our church, our mosque or temple or synagogue. It may be one of our friends or a member of our family. Many of you are concerned about the increase in infections and are anxious for the safety and well-being of your loved ones. You are worried about the possibility of getting infected yourself in a taxi or on a bus, at work, at the shops, at school or
Can you hear me, Scott?
university, whilst you are
Yeah, I
visiting
can, buddy.
a clinic or even
There you go. Sorry, I got
visiting
you.
hospital. These concerns are understandable and reasonable because as the country gradually opens up, as we resume more activities, the risk of infection inevitably increases. Yet even though the risk of infection is greater, it is by no means inevitable. Through our behavior as individuals, we can reduce the likelihood that we will get infected or even infect others. And it is through our personal and collective actions that we can continue to delay the rate of infection across society in our communities. Studies show that wearing a cloth mask or similar piece of clothing that covers both your nose and mouth at all times when one is in public is one of those measures that reduces the rate of transmission of the virus. Now, millions of South Africans, including small children, are now wearing cloth masks whenever they leave home. There are, however, some South Africans who have not yet taken up the practice of wearing masks. We would like to encourage everyone in our country to wear masks when they are in public. Let us make sure that we do not share masks and that we wash our masks thoroughly in soap and water after each use. The wearing of masks, however, is no substitute for regular washing of hands with soap and water or sanitizer and maintaining a distance of at least 1.5 meters from other people. Let us all remember not to touch our faces with unwashed hands and clean and sanitize surfaces that we touch regularly. We should also keep in mind that social distancing is still one of the most effective ways of reducing the spread of the virus. These basic practices are becoming even more important now as we ease the lockdown and enter a new phase in our coronavirus response. These are still the best ways of containing the spread of the virus. Our medical experts have advised that interventions which some people are embarking on, such as setting up fumigation tunnels and body spraying, should not be used as they have no proven benefit and may even be harmful. From the outset, we knew that extreme measures were needed to slow community transmission. But we also knew that a nationwide lockdown could not be sustained indefinitely or forever. With a move to alert level 3 from the 1st of June, our prevention response is now largely focused on the simple everyday things that each of us can do to protect ourselves and our communities. It is about each one of us taking personal responsibility whenever we are or whoever we are for curbing the spread of the disease. The power to defeat coronavirus is clearly in our hands. Our response is now also more focused on hotspot areas with the greatest rate of infection and sending multidisciplinary health teams to contain the outbreaks and ensure those with the infection get the necessary care. At the same time, we have massively increased screening for coronavirus symptoms throughout the country, every workplace, school, university, shopping center, place of worship, taxi rank, or other public spaces where people gather. Like many other countries, South Africa has been affected by the global shortage of coronavirus test kits and other materials. We have therefore had to become more targeted in our testing, prioritizing patients in hospitals, healthcare workers, vulnerable people like the elderly, and in hotspot areas. Although the situation is improving, we continue to experience delays in testing, and we are addressing this. This has severe implications for effectively managing patients with infection as well as tracing the contacts of infected people. We are therefore using every avenue available to source the supplies that we need and to increase our testing capacity and improve the turnaround time. Among some of the initiatives that we have pursued together with other countries on our continent is the groundbreaking Africa Medical Supplies Portal. This is a single continental marketplace where African countries can access critical medical supplies such as test kits from suppliers and manufacturers in Africa and around the world in the necessary quantities and also at competitive prices. This platform will complement the work that is being done to ensure that we have the medical equipment, personal protective equipment, and hospital facilities to manage the anticipated increase in COVID-19 patients. The coronavirus pandemic is not only a global health crisis, it is also a global economic crisis of ever-increasing proportions. No country, no industry, and no person is unaffected. Here in South Africa, the pandemic has severely disrupted the livelihoods of millions of our people.
It's like
As
he's
you are
got someone
aware,
else to
many
blame now,
businesses that
Scott.
stopped operating on the 27th
Yeah.
of March when the lockdown came into effect have not yet been able to reopen under current restrictions. These include large companies with many thousands of employees and many more small companies with just a handful of employees. This means that there are businesses that have not earned any income or revenue, and individuals who have not had any salary for over 80 days. Even with the measures that we put in place to support companies, workers, and poor households as part of the 500 billion relief package that we announced, there is a limit to how these businesses can be closed. When I announced that the country would be moving to alert level 3 from the 1st of June, I said that we would be giving consideration to the reopening of other sectors of the economy if the necessary safety precautions can be put in place and maintained. Following further discussions with industry representatives on stringent prevention protocols, and after advice from our scientists and consultation at the provincial level with our premiers, as well as discussions in the National Coronavirus Command Council, the Cabinet has decided to ease restrictions on certain other economic activities. And these activities include restaurants for sit-down meals, accredited and licensed accommodation, with the exception of home-sharing accommodation like Airbnb, conferences and meetings for business purposes, and in line with restrictions on public gatherings. Cinemas and theaters to be aligned to limitations on the gathering of people. Casinos, personal care services, including hairdressers and beauty services, non-contact sports such as tennis, golf, cricket, and others. Contact sports will be allowed only for training and modified activities with restricted use of facilities. In each instance, specific and stringent safety requirements have been agreed by the various representatives of these disciplines and businesses, and those will need to be put in place before a business or an activity or a discipline can reopen, and protocols will need to be strictly adhered to for those entities or businesses to remain open. Announcements will be made in due course to give details of these measures and indicate the date from which these activities will be permitted. We have taken this decision with due care and seriousness, appreciating the risks associated with each activity and the measures needed to manage those risks. Altogether, these industries employ well over 500,000 people, and this are the number of people they employed before the lockdown. We have had to think about these people who are employed in these industries and those who depend on them for their livelihoods. Through the easing of the lockdown, we are continuing to balance our overriding objective of saving lives and preserving livelihoods. It is important to remember that this is a global pandemic and that most countries are facing exactly the same challenges that we are facing, and they must find ways to resolve the dilemmas, exactly the same dilemmas that we are facing. We are therefore working closely with international agencies and other countries in responding to the virus. As chair of the African Union, we are involved in forging a common approach across the continent, ensuring that we mobilize resources and develop strategies to ensure that no country is left behind. There are currently over 250,000 confirmed cases in Africa, and there have been more than 6,700 deaths. This is relatively low compared to the global number of cases, which has now passed 8 million, largely because African countries acted swiftly to implement national lockdowns. However, we can expect infections in Africa to rise as countries start easing restrictions in the face of severe economic pressures, and we are working together as a continent to meet that challenge. It has been particularly important for us to open up personal care services because this is an industry that predominantly employs many women of our country. The last 3 months have been particularly difficult for the millions of women who work as hairdressers, in spas, as therapists and technicians. Many of these women are in businesses that are also owned by women, and a source of income is earned from these businesses, and many of them are informal businesses. Given women that they are involved in these industries,
I think he's lost the plot.
this will give them the support
Well,
to
this is why I
become
don't listen to him.
financially
I
independent.
wait for the SMS tomorrow morning from someone who's
And
put the 3
this
bullet points
is
down.
an important priority. It is with the heaviest of hearts that I stand before the women and the girls of South Africa this evening to talk about another pandemic that is raging in our country: the killing of women and children by the men of our country. As a man, as a husband, and as a father to daughters, I am appalled at what is no less than a war that is being waged against the women and the children of our country. At a time when the coronavirus pandemic has left us all feeling vulnerable and uncertain, violence is being unleashed on the women and children of our country with a brutality that defies any form of comprehension. The women of our country are being raped. They are being killed by men. These rapists and killers walk amongst us. They are in our communities. They are fathers, they are brothers, they are our sons and our friends. They are violent men with utterly no regard for the sanctity of human life. Over the past few weeks, no fewer than 21 women and children have been murdered. Their killers thought they could silence them. But we will not forget them, and we will speak for them where they themselves cannot. We will speak for Tshegofatso Pule, Naledi Pangindao, Nompumelelo Chaka, Nomfazi Gabata, Nwabisa Nkwadela, Alicia Korchi, and Lindelwa Penny. All of them are young women, or were young women, who were killed by men. We will speak for the 89-year-old grandmother who was killed in an old age home in Queenstown. The 79-year-old grandmother who was killed in Brakpan in Gauteng, and the elderly woman who was raped in KwaShwayimani in KwaZulu-Natal. We will speak for the innocent souls of Tshegofatso Pule's unborn daughter, who had already been given a name. We will also speak for 6-year-old Renacia Kochi and the 6-year-old child found dead in the veld in KwaZulu-Natal. These women are just not statistics. They have names, and they have families, and they have friends. This evening, our hearts, our thoughts, and our prayers are with them. I want to commend the South African Police Service for their excellent work in arresting almost all of these alleged perpetrators. As these suspects make bail applications this week, I have the utmost confidence that our courts will send the strongest of signals that such violence has no place in society. At a joint sitting of Parliament in September last year, I announced an emergency response plan to combat gender-based violence and femicide, and that 1.6 billion rand in government funding would be made available to support the implementation of the plan until the end of the financial year. We now have a national strategic plan to guide our country's national effort against gender-based violence. During the lockdown period, we have ensured that survivors of gender-based violence have access to support and services, including GBV hotline, shelters and centers, providing support to victims of sexual violence. Since December last year, 10 government-owned buildings have been handed over to the Department of Social Development by the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure to be used as shelters, addressing one of the biggest challenges facing survivors who want to leave abusive relationships. Over the last 18 months, we've made demonstrable progress in broadening access to support for survivors. 13 regional courts have been upgraded into sexual offenses courts. To support the work of law enforcement, 7,000 evidence collection kits have been distributed regularly to every police station in the country, and there are now over 1,000 survivor-friendly rooms at police stations. Many police, prosecutors, magistrates, and policymakers have undergone sensitivity and awareness training, and over 3,000 government employees who work with children and mentally disabled people have been checked against the National Register of Sex Offenders. Legislative amendments have been prepared. Among other things, minimum sentencing in cases of gender-based violence, bail conditions for suspects, and greater protection for women who are victims of intimate partner violence. I urge our lawmakers in Parliament to process these amendments to our laws without much delay. Our courts have been firm in dealing with cases of gender-based violence. Even during the lockdown period, they have handed down life sentences and multiple life sentences to perpetrators. I want to assure the women and the children of South Africa that our criminal justice system will remain focused on gender-based violence cases, and that we can expect more arrests and more prosecutions against perpetrators to follow. The perpetrators of violence against women and children must receive sentences that are fit for the horrific crimes that they commit. It is deeply disturbing that the spike in crimes against women and children has coincided with the easing of the coronavirus lockdown. According to the police, violent crime, especially murders and attempted murders, have increased since Alert Level 3 took effect on the 1st of June. Cases of abuse of women and children
What about
have
farm
also
murders?
increased dramatically.
Yeah, exactly.
We need to ask some very difficult questions of ourselves
Just talking
as a
in circles in
society.
a very good
In
accent.
particular, we need to examine the effect of alcohol abuse,
We call them hippo eyes on
not only
the
on levels of
channel.
violence, but also on road accidents and reckless behavior. Several international and domestic studies show clear linkages between alcohol abuse and gender-based violence. Of course, it is not alcohol that rapes or
Okay, if he
kills
doesn't
a woman or a child.
finish off in a few minutes, I'm
Rather,
going to
it
shut
is the
him down,
actions
Scott, because
of the men
this is
of
just
our
BS.
country. Violent
Yes,
men.
you've learned your lesson, Scott,
But if alcohol
of not tuning into a
intoxication is
presidential live
contributing
stream.
to these crimes, then it must be addressed with urgency by all of us. We need to draw lessons from this lockdown and decide how we can protect our society from the abuse of alcohol. Certainly, we need to provide greater support to people with drinking problems, including through
All right,
rehabilitation
I
and
think we've had
treatment.
enough of this.
We need to encourage responsible
let me shut 'em
drinking,
down.
especially among young people.
Great.
We need to be tough
Okay,
on
we're back,
liquor
Scott.
outlets
Let me just
that violate
rid
the
of that
terms of their
boring old
licenses
voice, huh?
and who sell
Give me a second
alcohol to those who are
Goodbye, hippo eyes. Okay. Now,
Praise the Lord.
yeah. Well, we gave it a go. I thought maybe something exciting would be announced, but it's just another nothing burger. Right, now guys, please welcome our guest, Scott Tungay. And Scott, we were just about to talk about growing up in the Drakensberg. So before we do, I just want to make a suggestion, and that is that your father knew me, Russell. He knew me through the bank. This is from back in the 70s, early 80s. You were born in 1990.
That's right.
Now, where else would he get the name Scott for you than from me? Because he knew me. He saw me just about every day at the bank. We were good mates. So I reckon that's where you got your name.
Your odds are pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know any other Scots really. Well, no at all.
There you go, you see.
There we go.
That's self-evident then. Now, tell me about growing up in the Drakensberg. I mean, it's the most beautiful place in the world. I mean, you would have been able to wander around the hills and climb the mountains, and just tell me about your life growing up there.
Yeah, it was great. Obviously, Mom and Dad were very busy business owners, so it was a very much a get home from school and just go spend the sunlight hours out on the hills, bicycle, motorbike, climbing trees, in the river. Had a couple mates who we were all in the local lift club together. So the smallest town, Winterton, is about 20, 30 k's away. So we'd have a lift club of about 5 or 6 of us every morning to primary school, and on the way back home, like depending on whose mom or dad was fetching you, is whose place you'd go and play at that afternoon. And it was a great childhood. I really am grateful to how I grew up, and even I've been living in the States for the last 4 years, and I got into a Kentucky author by the name of Wendell Berry, and he started talking about how he was handed this piece of land from his father.
Right.
And his father was handed this piece of land from his father. And he just started talking about how land is never owned, but land owns you.
Right.
And the memories that it owns of you, and the care and the responsibility and the authority that it weaves through your life. And I remember reading, sitting in a Kentucky cold winter, reading this page and being like, man, I miss home, and so my wife and I we've made it an effort to come back every American winter, to come back to South Africa for 3 months and visit the family. And this time we got stuck there and stuck here, and it's been really nice. We hit some fire breaks today. our first fire breaks of the season. So excuse my voice, but I
Got a bit of smoke.
smoked enough. Yeah, exactly. So no, but I love the day. What a place to grow up, and yeah, just really thankful.
Yeah, well, KZN is a beautiful part of the world. I mean, it really is. It's really
Yeah.
got everything. Yeah, so I had a farm at Champagne Castle, and I think I've been near Don Washup's caravan park. It was right up the top end of
Yes.
that, where those trees are,
Yeah.
where those 2 rows of houses are now. I had 50 acres
Yes.
there. Now,
That's awesome.
yeah, it was amazing views too, absolutely fabulous.
How much did that piece of land cost you back in the day?
It cost me 12,000 rand.
Oh my word.
Yeah, 50 acres. That was back in 1980.
Hmm.
Yeah, I sold it
Probably get
for
like-
a big profit, believe me.
Yeah, you probably get quite a few million for that today.
Yeah, I'm
Amazing.
sure. I'm sure.
Inflation.
Yeah, but the problem I had was that when I left South Africa, I mean, I just had to get rid of everything, and that's why I got
Yeah.
rid of it. Yeah. Right now, let's before we get on to general politics and stuff like that. Let's just talk about some of the things that the Ramaphosa's just said. He talked about how he had been able to delay the spread of the virus in South Africa. Have you seen any signs of him delaying the spread of the virus?
Well, is there a virus?
That's
I'm
another
not gonna. I'm not gonna go into this. You know, this has just been a bunch of rubbish, Scott. I think the biggest thing for me is it's just confirmed the power of the media. It's confirmed the power of a group consciousness that is captured. You know, whether it's through our schooling system, hand in hand with our media system, and I think the government's just like, sweet, like we'll use it. We'll use this tool.
Yeah.
And that's what this lockdown is. It's a tool.
So, do you think? Well, I'm sure you agree with me that the mainstream media are fake news. What are your views on the mainstream media?
Yeah, it's a deception machine. So if you really look back into the foundation of mainstream news, even let's say in South Africa, you know, like the Nats, they had complete monopoly over the news. You'd have this really well-dressed guy in a suit, goeienaand, 7 o'clock news.
Yeah.
And it's the official mainstream narrative. You know, like this is what the whole nation hears. And we are very, the way God designed us is that we take in things and we become what we take in.
Right.
You know, there's that fun story in Genesis where Jacob takes the sheep to the trough and he puts a speckly branch in the trough, and they all drink from that trough, and their babies become speckly babies. You know, but that's the analogy for news, right? So if you're consuming on your Facebook feed, on your TV, on your YouTube, your podcast, whatever you're consuming, your mind is going to start conforming to that, right? So that's why it says in Romans 12, it says be not conformed to this world, the pattern of this world, but transform your mind, renew your mind by the word, right? And so whatever we start taking in, whatever words come into our ears, whatever pictures come into our mind, that's what we become like. We start thinking that way all the time. We can really, like, we're crazy softwared people. And so to get back to your thing of the mainstream news or the fake news, fake media, it's not a business. People need to understand that. It's not like, man, I wish CNN or, you know, Fox News or whatever, name the Washington Post, name your newspaper, whatever your newspapers are there in Australia. Everyone thinks like, oh, this is a business run by a bunch of businessmen with a bunch of journalists who are just trying to do honest journalistic work.
Yeah.
And if I write them a letter and just say, you know, you guys, I'm going to call you out on your hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is not an issue for them because they're not a business. They're an indoctrination machine.
Yeah.
And so they are owned. They don't need money. Like this current scandal now in America is to defund or take away the advertisers of Tucker Carlson's show. Fox News doesn't need advertisers. They don't need money. Like number one, they're probably financed all these cable news cable and big media houses are probably financed with government money somewhere.
Yeah.
No one cares about if they have advertisers or not. This is a cultural control mechanism. It's the same with schools. And so here's just a fun thing. I'll end off this little thing and let you talk for a bit, Jeff Scott.
Okay.
But the way I look at media and news and education, because it's all one mechanism. We were taught a certain history growing up. Like, this is history. This guy did this guy did that.
Yeah.
And here's your textbook and here's your set books. And so that becomes our world. That becomes our reality. Problem is, what we found now, it's like these whole Black Lives Matter riots where they burnt down Minneapolis, is that, the guy leaning on the neck of the guy and killing him on the floor, 50 years ago during the civil rights movement, they had all these stories of like, he was a hero, he was a black saint, he was just a father, and a terrible white racist Nazi skinhead purposefully killed him. And 50 years ago, we didn't know any better because that's all they told us at the 7 o'clock news. But now we've got all the cell phone videos. We've got all the backstory. We can go and Google, was he a saint? Was he a good guy? Oh, wow. He was arrested. He held up a pregnant lady. He was a drug addict. He didn't die of getting stood on. He died of a heart attack. Like, oh my gosh, the narrative is not true. And so what you start seeing is like, wow, all the history I've been taught is probably not true. Like, it's probably really, really skewed. Like the civil rights movement of the 60s probably didn't happen that way. Even I look at our South African history a lot of it, I'm like, probably didn't happen that way. And so that's my opinion on news, is that it's a tool for indoctrination and the shaping of decision-making minds.
Yeah. Well, when we talk about history in South Africa, what shaped South Africa was not some kind of civil uprising by the British in the Transvaal before the Boer War. It was money. It was Cecil Rhodes.
Yeah, and,
it was,
and our boy Cecil Rhodes and Leander Starr Jamison. And it's like, come on, man. There's so much dark money and big money and cabals and secret dark rooms and and then all of us good English boys just like, well, I'm wearing a red coat for Queen and Country. Let's go do this thing. And we told it's a nice story of like, yeah, these bloody Boers, man, they're raping our kids. It's exactly what Ramaphosa is telling you tonight. He's telling you that women are getting raped in the streets and that men are to blame and all this stuff. It's like, dude, it's your own police who are killing people. It's your own military who are killing people. Like, you're just trying to shift and obfuscate and make yourself the good guy. And you've got the power to do that. And that's why what you're doing, Scott, is so powerful. This internet is a magic thing. It's our turn to craft narratives.
Exactly. Now, when we talk about Black Lives Matter, because this is really the current sort of big news that the media are pushing, there are two things I want to mention. One is that the media around the world are somehow suggesting that this movement is fantastic and it's revolutionary and it's wonderful, and the way they're actually presenting Black Lives Matter, which is funded by George Soros and the Open Society Foundation, just as a matter of interest, clearly reflects the hidden narrative that's going on behind the scenes. The other thing I'd mention is that if Black lives really mattered, why have they got abortion clinics right around America where black women are going and having babies aborted, right up to the date of birth? And nothing is said about that. But here you've got, as you said, a crim who was at, what was his name? George Floyd. Yeah. He was not a nice man, and yet he's kind of been given hero status.
Martyrdom status,
yeah. Yeah, it's just crazy. And then you've got the city of Seattle, where they've now set up a separate little country called Chaz.
And how
can they allow this shit?
2 days. What could be more peak communism? Running out of food in 2 days. That's great. I love it.
Yeah, and have you seen all the rubbish in the area that they've taken over?
Oh, it's great. It's
it just shows.
It's magical.
Yeah, And I believe actually one of them was killed when they were pulling the statue down. Apparently it fell on
Yeah.
one of them and he was killed in this little independent country. I bet they had to find a hospital outside their little independent country to, have him sort of taken to.
Yeah. No,
It's,
exactly.
it's just such a load of BS, isn't it? The whole thing.
Yeah. You know what it is? And here's the third little part. So we've mentioned academia or education.
Right.
We've mentioned media, news media. But the third part of this is Hollywood, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because they really pushed the Black Lives Matter thing hugely. But one of the things I've always said, we very much, my wife and I chat about this on a daily basis. Just we lived in a pretty liberal college town in America, and we had a lot of young college kids that we would spend time with and just mentor and encourage. And it's really sad because to a T, probably like 90% of them have all, posted the little black box and
they're all
Black Lives Matter,
indoctrinated.
solidarity. They're all indoctrinated, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, we were just saying, it's funny because, and my wife, she's been going hard against feminism and against the indoctrination of ladies through academia and stuff. And so she's been having a lot of pushback as well in this whole thing. But we were just saying, it's really funny. If you really want to try and discern truth, I could be lying to you, but no. I could be wrong, but I'm not lying to you. But the way you discern that I'm not lying to you is to look at the fruits of my life.
Right.
And the way I can discern, that I can have a good conversation with you is to look at the fruits of your life.
Right.
And so what I say to all these young guys is, hey, look at Hollywood, all these people who are telling you what morality is, because that's what Hollywood is, right? You put up a celebrity, you put up someone who looks great,
Yeah.
who everyone says is amazing, you throw a couple $1,000,000 at them, so they've got this big extravagant lifestyle. So they become high status in your world. Now they start moralizing, right? Their lifestyle becomes morality because celebrity, celebrated. So in order for me to be celebrated, I need to try and live like them. 5 divorces, 5 abortions, drugs, just degenerate lives. It's like the fruit of their lives. Chaps, unplug this rubbish, run far away. And it's the same with these news broadcasters. If you look at all these news broadcasters, I mean, the latest big thing in America, all the news broadcasters are gay guys. And it's like, okay, that's fascinating. Like, what's the fruit of that life?
It's almost like a prerequisite. You got to be gay now to actually be a news broadcaster.
So one of the biggest things, Scott, for me is with this whole Black Lives Matter thing is what's the fruit of the people's lives who are pushing it? And it's like, I'm sorry, guys, and I made a tongue-in-cheek tweet, but I was like, wow, like it's actually true. But I said, if Black Lives Matter were a black nationalist separatist movement that were trying to get their own little country where they can be black nationalists, like I'd get on board. I'd probably donate. I'd be like, hey, that's a great idea. Then you don't have to be oppressed by the evil white man. You can go and have your own country. And then it's not our responsibility anymore whether you succeed or fail. But that's not what Black Lives Matter are. They're not a black liberty movement, a black liberation movement. They're a white enslavement movement. They want to enslave white people with guilt. So instead, so their policy is not, hey, give us black people freedom. We want to have sovereignty. Their tactic is, hey, you're racist. And the way that you atone for your racism is to give us money, to give us jobs, to give us promotions, to give us all the things that you worked for. It's like, okay, I'll do that. Here's money. Here, I burnt all my white books. Now I only read black books. I burnt all my white art. Now I only buy black art. Am I good now? Am I not a racist anymore? It's like,
crazy.
No, you're still a racist. Here's the next thing. Shave all your heads. You can't wear this thing. You guys must give us all your this. Like, it'll never be enough.
You got to wear black on Friday.
Exactly. And man, I laughed. Yeah, exactly. I laughed. There was this pastor, this huge big pop celebrity pastor in America who obviously tried to chat about Black Lives Matter and all this stuff at his woke church on a Sunday, but he obviously said something wrong. So my wife and I were just scrolling through Instagram, and there's this guy like fake sobbing, like, please don't cancel me because I've said this. Like, I'm so sorry, black. I'm just trying to listen and learn. And you can see that this guy is terrified of being called a racist. And it's like, when did we get such weak men leading the church that you're terrified of being called names? Like, at the end of the day, you're a man who's supposed to stand on biblical truth, and then some guy who's not even a Christian can come along and be like, you're a racist. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry.
You know what? I think that the R word is something you wear as a badge of honor, because when people start
If you're
using
not a
that,
racist,
they've
there's
lost the
something wrong
plot.
with you nowadays.
Yeah.
Exactly. If you haven't been called racist, you're not speaking the truth nowadays.
Now, we talked about Hollywood, and China's influence on Hollywood today is enormous. They've bought into Hollywood in a big way, and the suggestion has been made that the actual types of movies that are now being produced in Hollywood actually present China as a wonderful place. What are your views on that?
Yeah, it's what do they say about the he who pays the piper calls the tune, and he who owns the movie studio calls the script. And movies have been a phenomenally powerful way of shaping culture over the years. There's many examples, and a bunch will come. But like, for instance, smoking. This is the easiest one, right? Smoking. So every Western movie, you'd have John Wayne, and he'd have a Camel cigarette.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, like, smoking's really manly. So everyone wanted to smoke. Then, when they started saying, ooh, smoking's not too good, what did they do? They didn't go on this campaign of smoking's evil, smoking's bad. They just stopped all the really good looking guys and really good looking girls from smoking in movies. Like, it just disappeared. And that normalized the behavior of, okay, we're not going to smoke anymore. And if you look at it, they probably started doing the opposite. Find a really ugly person in the movie and make them smoke. Find a really bad person in a movie, make them smoke. So whatever you want to normalize, you make the good-looking people do, and you make the bad-looking people do the opposite of. And so with China, I think one of the biggest exports that American culture or movies exports is this worldview of Western normality, right? In my generation, we've grown up, there's been no wars, there's been no deprivation, there's been no hardship. It's just a really comfortable Western life. And Hollywood supports that, It supports this, like, life has always been this way. And so I think what you can do if you're China is to start destabilizing the idea of Western civilization being a moral good, right? So I grew up really loving my British heritage, and like, man, the British Empire is pretty good. Like, we've got a really good morality. We abolished slavery. We colonized the world with great infrastructure and great traditional culture. Like, I love my British culture. I love my British heritage. But what started happening was, you can start portraying, this is what American cinema did, you start portraying Britain as this evil empire, and guys like Rhodes certainly were. But what you do is you portray the everyday, just Bobby British man who's in a red coat as this evil rapist of Americans and evil all this stuff. And now all of a sudden, like, everyone who's part of American culture is like, yeah, screw the British, man. They were an evil empire. And now that is the narrative. That is British culture is terrible. British culture is ugly. And so for China, it's not hard for them to change the perception of America, right? So now we have a lot of war movies where Americans are doing atrocities. Americans are doing degenerate stuff around the world.
Right. Now, what I wanted to just move on to is how we just now talked about Black Lives Matter. And if we look, for example, at Ramaphosa's speech just now, where he basically talked about black women in townships being raped and murdered and da-da-da-da-da, and he completely ignored the subject of farm murders and farm attacks, which have increased dramatically since level 3. Clearly, Ramaphosa is a racist. I mean, there's no question about that. You just have to look at the ANC policies. But the fact that he completely excludes a key part of the community from the discussion. That to me is very problematic. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, I'm gonna come at this from a totally different tack. I don't have a problem with Ramaphosa being racist. I don't have a problem with black guys being racist. I don't have a problem with black guys saying, I prefer black people, I prefer black culture, I prefer living around black people. Like, that's fine. Like, you have that right. The problem comes in when us white boys start saying, okay, well, I like white people. I like living amongst white people. I like white culture. Then they're like, oh, you're a racist. So here's my take on Ramaphosa. The dude's an obvious black nationalist. He's an obvious Pan-Africanist, part of the whole Leninist party. And we know that, like you say, the manifesto has been out there since, 50, 60 years or whatever of their plan to take land and take control. And so it's like, it's no shock to us. So one of the things we really need to let go of, so many white South Africans have this tendency to say, man, Cyril Ramaphosa is stupid. Man, the ANC is a bunch of idiots. They couldn't organize a piss up in a brewery. And, they end up writing these little opinion pieces of like, if we just had these 7 policies, the ANC could be South Africa could be a first world country in just 2 years. Yeah. Multicultural rainbow paradise. They're not stupid. They play stupid. It's part of the playbook. These guys are incredibly smart. They're incredibly intentional. They're incredibly missional and purposeful. You just don't know what their mission is, and that's why you put on them a white mission. Because what is the mission of any white middle class person? Thinks that, well, the president should run the country for the good of the people. The cabinet ministers should run their departments for the good of the people. It's really not hard to run a good country. And so that's the mindset that we're putting on our leaders of they just want to run a nice second world country.
Right.
No, they don't. They want a Leninist takeover of the middle class so that there are only 2 classes in South Africa, the poor and the political elite that looks after them. That is their mission, and they're doing a very good job at it. 10 out of 10, Mr. Ramaphosa.
Now, do you think then that there's so much talk about incompetence at the top within the ANC? Do you think that that's actually misplaced and it should be intentional corruption?
Yeah, definitely. Like there is no... We've had 25 years to see the fruits, to see the case study.
Yeah.
Like, there is no incompetent... They're incompetent if you hold them to the standard that we have. That's why multiculturalism doesn't work, is because one culture has this standard for a governor, this culture has this standard for a governor.
Right, I get that.
And now we put all those people together, and these people think that these guys are imbeciles, while these guys are laughing because they're like, well, we're actually taking all your stuff, and you just think we're stupid, when actually they're evil.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, when I first started covering South Africa regularly on the news, I mean, I was actually appalled when I realized that they had these policies like black economic empowerment and stuff like that, which
and farm murder is a policy, by the way.
Yeah. Well, look at the gangs that go out and commit these atrocities. I mean, they're very, very well prepared, aren't they?
Yeah, and it's a policy because it's not cracked down on. It's not given media attention. It's part of their land policy. Their land policy is they want to move these white farmers off the lands, but they don't want to pay them. So 2 tactics: terror and inconvenience. And obviously now with this lockdown, just tank the economy and get the whites to leave voluntarily. Well, both of those tactics are voluntary, right? Because if you can terrorize the farmers, maybe they'll leave. And if you tank the economy, maybe they'll leave.
Right.
And both ways, you don't have to compensate them for their farm.
Right. Now, I'm just going to reconnect with you because I've actually, my video of you is pretty poor quality, and I just want to just reconnect, see if I can get a better line. So I'm going to close this call and I'll get straight back to you. It may be my
Wi-Fi, but hey, yeah.
I'll be right back to you, okay? All right, let's just see if we can get a better quality image. I'm sure we can. Hi, Scott.
Alrighty, Scott. Yeah, it might be my my bush Wi-Fi. Who knows?
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty much the same again. All right. Okay, well, look, it's not bad, but it's just I know we could get better,
It's not the best.
and not the best, but
Yeah.
it's fine. I mean, you're a handsome-looking dude, so it doesn't matter.
Thank you.
Okay, now let's get back to current events in South Africa, and I'm talking about this lockdown that Ramaphosa is, suggesting has been a huge success. To me, it's been a complete disaster. It's destroyed the economy of South Africa, what was left of it. Now, do you think
Yeah.
that what they're doing is intentional? Because Ramaphosa a couple of weeks ago said, when we get out of the lockdown, it's going to make black economic transformation so much easier. And to me, the message behind that was that during the lockdown, we want white middle-class businesses to go bankrupt. And that's why we're very happy to just keep on screwing, all those thousands, hundreds of thousands of little white businesses, because when we come out the other end, then the blacks will be able to say, oh, there's a hole in the market here, there's a hole in the market there, and then set up a little business and so on and so on. And that's the kind of message that I get from what he's talking about. What are your views on that?
Yeah, it goes back to this expropriation thing. So obviously everyone knows farm expropriation. You kick the farmer off, you take the farm, now you have a farm, you give the title deed to a black man. Now have what Zimbabwe did, right? That's Zimbabwean style expropriation. Now South Africa has what Zimbabwe didn't have, which is a massive middle class of small business owners. So you don't only want to expropriate the farms, you also want to expropriate the middle class business economy. And the way you do that without compensation is you bankrupt them. The banks come in, reap their assets because they're unable to pay any payments and everything like that. Yeah. So now the banks have got all these assets they're sitting on, and it's like, crap, the bank needs to be bailed out. Who bails out the bank? The political elite come in, buy out all the assets, and now they've at discount rate, and they've essentially, it's one of the biggest transfers of wealth is just starving them of cash flow. They have to give up their assets to the banks. The banks cry out for to be saved by the government. The government says, "Sure, we'll do that, but we want all those assets that you've taken." And then they deploy it among their cadres. It's not going to be the poor Africans who get all these assets and businesses
exactly
and properties.
Right.
It's going to be the top 1,000 politically connected elites.
Yeah.
And hey, good on them. That's their ideology. That's their mission. They've said it from the beginning, and they're doing it well. So that's it. This whole thing of putting it to incompetence, it infuriates me more than any other explanation. It's like, guys, they're not incompetent. They're doing a phenomenal job. And for Ramaphosa to say, yes, this lockdown has been a great success. It's like, it has been a great success, just for a different reason than he's telling you.
Yeah. So he's hiding the real situation there. Now, the role of the non-government organizations in South Africa. What are your views on organizations like Open Society Foundation and the influence they have over the ANC government and their policy?
Yeah, it's I recently read. I'm still reading it again. Ian Smith's autobiography, and the Rhodesians struggled because the liberal British political elite were the ones funding and directing the guerrilla war against the Rhodesia government. And what would happen is in Como and then Mugabe, but what was the Malawian chap's name? I'm going to be wrong on this one, but anyway, the Malawian resistance leader,
right.
They would go on regular trips to London. And in London, they would meet with financiers, they would meet with political strategists, they would meet with advertising strategists, they would meet with, all these NGO kind of groups who were pushing for the decolonization of Africa, right? And it was really effective. Now, same thing happens in South Africa, right? The ANC, they had all their elites. They weren't just chilling on the the Angola border and on the Botswana border waiting for their time. They were out in Moscow and Beijing and London, hobnobbing it up with financiers, with political strategists, with branding strategists. And so what a lot of people don't understand is that politics isn't just by the representatives that sit at your Capitol or your Congress building or whatever. Politics is all about money and advertising. So media and finance, right?
Right.
And these NGOs, the reason they operate as NGOs is because you set up a platform where either a billionaire can be the patron of it, or tons of just, people of the same political persuasion can put money into. And now they are all absolved of any guilt because it's the NGO that did it. It's not I just thought they were a nice tea charity that I gave my money to. It's like, no, you know exactly what you're giving your money to, and you should be held accountable for what that group does. But that's how NGOs work. They remove accountability from the finances, right? So now you have finances, you have an operating team of guys, and now they do political projects. And so the Open Borders Foundation, for instance, they had to lobby on the American State Department to come in and destabilize Libya and Egypt, and they probably played into all of that with their own strategies and stuff, but there's probably links. But anyway, Libya, Egypt get destabilized. Now the floodgates just open of all these people, these economic migrants being pushed through the Mediterranean into Africa, right? Into Europe.
Yeah.
And the Open Borders Foundation, like the whole thing, I'm sure a lot of your guys are well researched, but that whole Kalergi plan of flooding Europe with non-white people to destroy the Christian civilization, and that in that way then kind of create a one world government over Europe, which is the European Union since 1970 something. And so you look at how these NGOs play into these little geopolitical things that happen all over the place. It's the same for South Africa, right? And I mean, we had a brief chat, but you mentioned Ruth Hall, and it's so easy to really see that if you can't influence things through government because it's such a slow process and you have to vote people and all that stuff, but you can have a really good idea and get a bunch of people to throw some money at it, and now you can put some marketing at it, and you can do some legal warfare, you can open some lawsuits and try and go that angle. It becomes very effective. It's basically what Black Lives Matter have done. Black Lives Matter is an NGO that has had tons of money thrown at it, huge PR, huge legal stuff, because there's huge legal battles going on as well. And they've gone and rioted, and they're protecting, the money is just flying in to protect and bail out all of their paramilitary, their rioters.
Right.
So that's how NGOs work. It's through media, financing, legal, and hey, even paramilitary. If you can get a little
like
paramilitary
Antifa
action in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I'm just going to address the people watching the live stream at the moment. We've got about 250 here. Guys, please remember we're auctioning this beautiful painting. The opening price is 5,000 Rand, and the funds go to Boere Droogte Help, not Boere Lichion, as I misspoke earlier. So it's going to the Boere Droogte Help charity, which helps farmers. So please, if you've got a free 5,000 Rand lying around, please put in a bid, because it's a beautiful painting. It's worth a heck of a lot more than that.
It's the price of a small farm back in the 70s.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how inflation has just taken over, isn't it? Now, let's get back to this current situation that I think what's happening in America and even Europe epitomizes the problems that are just breaking out everywhere. And I've seen so many videos in recent days of blacks as a group. It's always a group of blacks attacking a solitary white person. This is not in South Africa. This is in the United States of America. This is in Europe, where they've now got black gangs fighting each other. Surely there's got to be a point in time when the white population, in particular the white men, stand up and say, enough's enough. Got to stop this.
Yeah. One of the biggest things, Scott, my generation especially, has been indoctrinated into hating ourselves, right? Into hating our heritage, hating our community, our culture. And one of the biggest things in America is there's this crazy belief. It's a post-Christian nation. So it used to be a very Christian nation, very agrarian nation, very tight communities. And then, this insidious subversion started pushing in where, feminism through the schools, start breaking up the family by sending a woman into the workplace, start breaking up the families, intergenerational families by creating this incredibly transient, like, oh, well, if you've got a job here, well, there's a better job 1,000 miles away for an extra $1,000. So now the whole family moves away from grandpa and moves away from brother-in-law. And so you just have this incredible breakup of the family. And it plays straight in to what you were saying there of like the solitary white, libertarianism is a psyop against white Christian males. If you look at libertarianism, I would wager 90% of all libertarians in the world are white Christian males, or at least Western white males, post-Christian males. It's a psyop to get you to say, hey man, just leave me alone, you do your thing, I'll do my thing. And it sounds great in principle. I used to be a libertarian. It sounds great in principle because it's your way of managing a chaotic world without having to take responsibility for it, right? So it's like, yeah, they can go and kill that white girl down the street, and they can go beat up that old granny, and they can go, but it's not my responsibility because I'm an individual, and they're an individual, and I'm just in my cabin in the woods, and hopefully it comes and eats me last. And what's happening now in America, in Europe, in Africa, hopefully in Australia, there's a rising up of nationalism again. Nationalism is the antidote to libertarianism. Nationalism says, my dad was good, my grandpa was good, my great-grandpa was good, they were strong men, they were good men. The culture they handed down, I want to live in. I love my people. That's why I say I don't mind if Ramaphosa is racist. Just allow me the same preference for my own people. I often feel like I'm more British than the British because I've never experienced British culture. All I had was the traditions and the values and the ideals. And so, it's like, this is my culture. This is what I love. This is what I love being around. And then being next to my Afrikaans neighbors, it's like, man, I like their culture. That's really cool. Like,
yeah,
I can live next to them. That's great. But, to force totally disparate religions and ethnicities and cultures into one big city and then force them to have political fights over each other, who enforces what? All the white boys retreat to libertarianism. And then all you've got left is now strong women. So the big thing in America right now is that it's weak men, strong women, and zero in-group preference. And so you see this girl getting attacked, you see this old granny getting attacked, you see a guy getting killed by mobs of people who have a very strong in-group preference. And so where I'm really encouraged, Scott, is that there's a huge growing of this rising of nationalism in the consciousness of young men in America, of saying, you know what, this place is worth fighting for. This culture is worth fighting for. This heritage is worth living again.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be shut down by fear of being called a racist. I'm not going to be shut down for fear of defending my people, my family, my community. And so to answer your question, those videos you are seeing are in very multicultural, very liberal areas. Those things don't happen in conservative areas. Those things don't happen. For instance, that video that the whole world saw of that Ahmaud Arbery guy who was shot by that father and son with a shotgun, that's how conservative areas roll. You come into our area and you try and break into our stuff, we're going to confront you.
Yeah.
And so what we're seeing is an incredible decay of liberalism eats itself, right? And that's why I'm so hopeful about South Africa. Communism eats itself. Marxism eats itself, and it can't stand. And what is left is the enduring things, which is family, community, heritage. And so what we're seeing in America is this dying of liberalism. And what's going to be left is a whole bunch of nations that are going to say, right, that empire wasn't for us. We're probably going to balkanize. And there will be some federations, but it's probably going to be a balkanizing. Same in South Africa is what I think is going to happen. It's this, the money doesn't flow forever. Your 5,000 Rand farm back in 1970 is now a 5 million Rand farm.
Yeah.
And that parabola goes like this,
Yeah.
So very soon it's going to be a 50 million Rand farm. And then when the economy falls out and all the property rights fall apart, then it's a 500 billion Rand farm. No one wants to buy it. And so what we're seeing is this.
Don't you think expropriation without compensation is going to have a huge impact on farms in South Africa?
Already has. I'm sure there's tons of people who are still. The way I explain it to a lot of people, Scott, is Zimbabwe had a neighbor where when all this stuff started going down, that's going down right now in South Africa, the whole middle class population, the whole white population,
came to
could
South
just
Africa.
pack up all this stuff on a trailer and just pop across the border and start life again.
Yeah.
There is nothing like that for South Africans. We're a captive middle class. 100,000 a year can get out to Australia, America, England, but there's still 4 to 5 million left that can't get out, or that are too heavily invested to get out because you're going to lose everything and have to start again. And so I liken it to a ship that is sunk, and this air bubble is keeping the ship afloat. It's keeping the economy afloat, is
Right.
a captive middle class. And there's obviously a leak in this air bubble of 100,000 people a year. But where do these 4 million people go when the economy tanks?
Yeah.
So land prices are still, where they are because the farmers are going, hey, we're still going to farm. People still need food. And I think the government knows that, which is why now the farm murder stuff, right? Well, if we can't get them to voluntary leave, then we'll terrorize them.
Right. No, I love your analogy of the air bubble. I think that's really where it's at. Now, I have to tell you, a lot of people say to me, Scott, why are you doing this? Why are you spending your life just putting up videos alerting the world to what's going on in South Africa? And I always say to them that, I'm an old fart. I remember how things used to be back in the 1960s, 1970s, when there wasn't, divorce was unheard of. Families stuck together. And I've seen the erosion of the family unit around the world. It's incredible. And as you said, Hollywood's had a big part to play in this. It's this indoctrination that, Christianity and, knowing that you are a child of Jesus is, basically they're trying to say that's not important. It's all BS. But the BS is that when you lose that moral status, you become totally depraved, absolutely depraved. Now, what I love about South Africa is there's one particular community in the white community, and they have stuck religiously to their old ways, and that is the Afrikaners and the Boers, and that's why I relate to them so much, because they've just hung on to, their beliefs, and nothing is going to change them, despite all the indoctrination. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I thoroughly, I have a lot of honor for the Afrikaner. And, I've been chatting with a bunch of Boertjies on social media, and I've really had a good time discussing our mutual shared objectives, right? I say to a lot of people, I'm obviously an Anglo-nationalist, but I'm a friend to all nationalists, right? So if you're a Zulu nationalist, you're my friend because we have the same goals. That goal is I don't want to control you, and I'm thankful that you don't want to control me. And we can be good neighbors, but we're not going to meddle in each other's marriages and families, if you want to have that very clear analogy.
Right.
And so with the Afrikaner boys, they're the closest culture to me that still has a huge in-group preference.
Right.
My Anglo culture, we have the in-group preference of a bucket of crabs.
Yeah.
There's I wish we could have 1/10 of the Afrikaner in-group preference of just having this understanding that we stick together. And I actually floated that as a practical game plan going forward, not just in South Africa, because the rest of the West is fighting the same enemy. But in-group preference is the way forward, right?
Right.
And the Afrikaners have the head start on this. If you can have it's to copy the Indians and copy the Jews and copy the Greeks. They do this so well. Everywhere they go, they don't become a South African. They don't become an Australian. They don't become an American. They stay Indian. They stay Jewish. They stay Greek. And what they do is they buy from their cousins. They employ their brother-in-laws. They promote each other's businesses. They live in the same area, the same neighborhood. They buy up all the properties together. They monopolize the supply chains. They have their own religious system. They have their own legal system. They're totally sovereign from the empire they're living in, and they obviously just get along and do the right thing. But if the empire crumbles around them, they don't care, because they've got the sovereign infrastructure operating at a very high rate. And I think the Afrikaners are very close to that. The Afrikaners, they are very close to having an almost sovereign economic system, a sovereign cultural system, that when the South African Empire, it's a failed state, South Africa is a failed state.
Yeah, it is.
But the control mechanisms they're still coasting, right? The petrol on the boat ran out 10, 15 years ago, and now they're just coasting and cruising on, because there's such a huge ship, it takes a long time to slow down.
Yeah.
But there will come a time when the ship slows down and sinks. And then the Afrikaners are going to stay afloat, and the Jews are going to stay afloat, and the Indians are going to stay afloat. And that's, I really respect the Afrikaners for that. And I just wish that my African Anglos would I joked with a mate, and I was like, it's time for Anglo Forum. The Afrikaners have Afri Forum. It's time for Anglo Forum.
Yeah. Well, look, I really believe that, and I'm not just talking about the young white community in South Africa. I think young white communities all over the world have basically lost their direction and their identity. They're like, you use the analogy of the boat running out of petrol and still moving in the same direction. I think that the young white people around the world, because of the media bombardment about, Black Lives Matter and all this sort of stuff, they're floundering. They've kind of lost direction, and they're trying to find a purpose. And I think that's why you find so many people, especially in America, that go on these Black Lives Matter protests are white people.
Yeah.
I find that extraordinary.
Yeah, they're trying they're trying to find an identity.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. Now, if you dare say all lives matter, it's like racist. I mean,
heresy.
How does that work? Tell me, how does that work? Is this the indoctrination?
It's a religion, Scott. So, America especially, but all of the Christian West, Australia, South Africa, Western Europe, we exchanged Christianity as a moral fabric for liberalism. And what happened in America is that the gods of liberalism, here's the basics of Christianity 101. Man was created by God. We fell into sin. Jesus had to come to atone for that sin. We are now back at peace with God if we choose the Lord Jesus Christ as our Savior and enter into that salvation. So we're back at peace, right? So man created, fall, salvation, back at peace. That's the Christian religion. The liberal, Marxist, globalist, New World religion is also original sin, whiteness. If you're white, you have colonial sin, you have slavery sin, you have privilege sin. So there's an original sin, right? There's an atonement journey, but with no redemption. There is no savior. The only savior is death, right? So what happens in this religion is, to go full circle, is death to white people, right? And it's not stated, but that is the only redemption for a white man. You know, the joke in the 60s was the only good commie's a dead commie.
Right.
Well, now the joke is the only good white person's a dead white person. And the problem is, we have been indoctrinated in the schooling, in the media, and our priests, who are the talking heads and the celebrities, our priests are saying, hey man, you're a sinner. You're a sinner and you need salvation. Oh, okay, tell me what I must do to be saved. Come to this Black Lives Matter rally. Post a black square on your Instagram. Shout down any white man who looks like he's confident and loves his people. Kill a white person. Like, literally, that is the way to salvation. But then right at the end, they're like, am I saved now? Am I saved yet? No. The last salvation is to kill yourself. Take your own life. That is liberal religion 101.
Wow. Well, look, I have a resident priest on this channel. His name's Dan Berryman. And he does our Sunday service every Sunday. Lovely guy. And we actually met totally by coincidence. He sent me an email once, and I told his story in a video. And I was so impressed with this guy. I said, look, we got to have a live stream. So we actually went on live. And he's an old fart like me. And, you know, we chatted for a couple of hours. And after that, he approached me. He said, can I, because he was a priest for 20 years. And his message is, today he is so disappointed in the church in South Africa. Because pre-apartheid, the church was the one that was saying, hey, you know, you got to get rid of apartheid, it's evil. Now the church is staying completely quiet about the ANC's racist policies like black economic empowerment and triple BEE and all this sort of stuff. So he's basically, well, he's no longer a pastor because he's, as I say, he's an elderly fellow, but lovely man. And I think he's spot on.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's all about weak men, Scott. It's, you know, there's a great meme that has gone around those 4 political boxes, and it says, good times create weak men create bad times or hard times create strong men create good times create weak men. You know, so there's that cycle of history. Yeah, and we are entering, we have been living in the last 50 years incredibly decadently good times.
Yeah.
And of course, that's bred weakness in men. And you could argue it breeds strength in women. So we have weak men and strong women in good times. Now, there's been a shift. We are entering into the new times of hard times. And of course, we all wail and cry and be like, oh, it's the end of the world and this is crazy. And we blame and complain and write letters to the editor about how incompetent our leaders are. But here's the reality. It's all the weak men squealing because they're petrified of hard times. And this is where I get really excited, is as a Christian, we have a theology of hard times and strong men, right? Christianity is not a comfort religion. It's not a decadence religion. I believe there is a blessing. There's a blessing of the Lord with wealth, with family, with love, with peace. You know, it says in, I think in Romans, I may be corrected, but it says, aim to live a quiet life, working with your hands, and live at peace with everybody as much as is possible to you. Like that for me is the Western civilization life, right? We achieved that. That was the peak of good times. Work with your hands, love your family, be a man of peace, and live at peace with everybody. That's an amazing fruit of Christian religion. But now those men have all become weak.
Yeah.
You know, it says in Exodus, God says to the Israelites, he says, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to make you wealthy. I'm going to bring you into land. You're going to be so prosperous and blessed. And when you have eaten and had your fill, do not forget to bless and thank the Lord who gave this to you.
Yeah.
And that is the state of our civilization, is that people have stopped blessing and thanking the Lord, right? We've grown so ungrateful. We've grown so unaware of the Lord's blessing on our lives.
Yeah, exactly.
We've become, and so my biggest thing here is that it's time now for strong Christian men to stand up. The problem is the church is run by weak Christian men. And weak Christian men are petrified of strong Christian men being promoted in their hierarchies. And so they kick them out or shun them or shame them or blackmail them.
Or call them
And
names
so what
like
we are
racist.
seeing, yeah, call them names like racist or sexist or, whatever the thing could be. Or you're just an insensitive bigot and we love people in this church and you're not welcome here. And so the biggest thing is there's a sifting happening in the church. The times are changing. We're in a sifting season. We've had this great fruit season. Well, now it's time to sift. And I believe that, weak men are going to be sifted. There's hopefully for them a time of repentance. And if they can repent and embrace strength, then maybe they can hold on to their place in the hierarchy into this new season. But for many of them, I believe that the Lord is exposing the church. He's exposing media, and he's even just exposing everyday people. I think social media, a lot of people like social media is evil. It's the devil. For me, I'm like, this is great. Like I can see all the dudes who are crazy, and I can see all the guys who haven't bowed the knee. Romans 11 says there are 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee. So Elijah was busy griping to the Lord, like, God, they've killed all your prophets, and now they're trying to kill me. They've torn down all of your temples. And basically, he was saying where America and Australia, South Africa are now today. It's like, God, aren't you going to do anything? Like, God, like I'm the last guy speaking truth, and now they're trying to come and kill me. And God says to him, Elijah, I hope it was Elijah, maybe it was Elisha, but anyway, one of the prophets, he says to him, there are 7,000 men I've reserved for myself who have not bowed the knee to Baal.
Right.
And it's like, wow. And I feel that for all of us, wherever we are around us, there are thousands who have not bowed the knee.
Yeah.
And all we're waiting for is the season to click into hard times. Things are going to fall apart, and the strong men are going to rise to the top like cream.
I totally agree with you. Now, I just want to address the side chat, and firstly, I just want to recognize a lovely lady. Her name's Lali Dutoy. Now, just so people know, Lali won the Protea painting a few weeks back, and she put in a great bid, and she then donated the painting to Solidarity. They're helping the hunt, and paid the money to the charity. And Lali has just put in a bid on the painting we're selling for 21,000 Rand, which is going to be a fabulous help to Boeredoog to help. Lali, thank you so much. That's wonderful. And yes, it'll be a fabulous painting for your Karoo guest house, because it is a Karoo painting, and it's got a story you can tell now. Okay, now, getting back to what we were talking about there with strong men, I found it quite extraordinary that when the American anthem was being sung last year, you had a number of footballers, largely black footballers, who at the time the anthem was being played, instead of standing there with their hand on their hearts recognizing the great country America, they got down on their knees and sort of like they were saying, well, we need to pray for this country because Black Lives Matter. I mean, and then the media's response was like, oh, these guys are fantastic. They made heroes out of them. But if the shoe had been on the other foot, if this was white players who did that because they're concerned about what's happening around America because of Black Lives Matter, they would have been scorned and probably kicked out of their teams.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's a huge part of this is ungratefulness. One of my favorite African American gentlemen is Muhammad Ali.
Oh, he's amazing.
What I loved about Muhammad Ali is that he spoke the truth and he wouldn't apologize for what his opinions were. And one of his opinions, he said, I thank the Lord that my granddaddy came across on a slave ship to America, because here I am, and I'm not. I think he had just come back from like Ghana or wherever the rumble in the jungle was.
Oh, that was
like,
Zaire.
I thank the Lord, Zaire. Like, I thank. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hilarious. He's like, I thank the Lord my granddaddy came across on that slave ship. This is the greatest country on earth. I
Yeah.
kissed the ground when I got back here.
Yeah.
And that's what I say to a lot of guys, even white Americans, but especially black Americans. If you come to Africa for 1 week, you'll go back home and kiss the ground when you get back there. You don't understand the civilizational inheritance that you live in. Even if, when my wife and I got married, we were dirt poor. We were in credit card debt. I couldn't work for 6 months. And when I did get to work, I worked I worked in an Amazon warehouse doing a 12-hour shift, unpacking boxes, because that's the only job I could get.
Yeah.
And it's like, we made it. Like, we made it work, and I was like pumped, like I'm earning dollars, and we're building a house, and like, the biggest thing in life is to have gratitude.
Yeah.
To have gratitude for what can I do. And here's the thing: the most marginalized person in America, if you're a black, lesbian, queer, paraplegic in America, you have more power to act on a vision than someone who is very capable anywhere in Africa.
Well, you know what I find extraordinary when you talk about those fringe groups like the LGBTQ community. If you identify with one of those communities, you're automatically knocked off the list of people who could be racist. Now, I don't know how that works, but if you're a marginal group, you're then fantastic. You've got your own beliefs, and you can't be besmirched. But if you're just someone who's trying to live a straight life and is happy to speak his mind, wow, don't the labels come flying at you?
Yeah.
No, okay.
And it comes back to their religion. It's victimhood infers status in their religion. So the more victimhood you are, the more status you get.
Yeah.
Whereas for our Christian religion, a strong man is someone who doesn't complain, he doesn't act the victim, and he takes responsibility for his life. That's how you get honor and status in a Christian hierarchy.
Yeah. Now, I just want to get back to Muhammad Ali. That match he had with George Foreman, I think it was, in Zaire.
Yeah.
And there's actually a song that you can look up on YouTube. It's called The Rumble in the Jungle in Zaire, and it's a great little song. It was written way back then. Okay. Now, there's another issue that I want to cover. Now, we're talking about the nationalistic aspect of the Afrikaners and the Boers and how they're maintaining their culture, which I think is fantastic. But what they're doing in America is they're trying to get whites and blacks to intermarry and have colored children, and the whole white society is being completely watered down. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a fascinating strategy. A lot of people my generation don't know this, but miscegenation was a crime in many countries, not just white countries, but black countries, Indian countries, Muslim, like many countries around the world. Miscegenation was a crime that could get you punished.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things with I have an inkling, when you look at all the things that are pushed through the media and pushed through advertising, it's never white men and black women. It's predominantly 99% white women and black men.
Exactly.
Is what is pushed. Now, what's the reason for that, right? One reason is to demoralize the white men. If you can't get white women to marry you because they're another in-group is coming in and monopolizing them, it's demoralizing. And then the second thing is, demographically, black men in America don't stay married, or they don't marry.
They don't look after
They
their
don't
kids.
father their children.
That's right.
And they're very abusive. There's a lot of spousal abuse. So what you're actually doing is you're creating a fatherless generation of mixed children who don't identify with either side, right, of their black or white heritage. And there's a guy whose podcast I listen to a lot, Vox Day. He was talking about nationalism and all this stuff, and a guy asked him, he said, Vox, I'm a mixed child. Like, which side do I choose? And it was a great response. Vox said back to him, he said, I'm not the arbiter. I'm just telling you how nationalism works. It's up to you to be accepted by the people that you need to be accepted by. And what these people are doing, these social engineers, this cabal of people who are trying to destroy America and destroy Western civilization, Christian civilization, they realize that the way to destroy in-group preference is to make people not identify with their father, not identify with their grandfather, not identify with the history books that, hey, this hero of my history looks like me. And the easiest way to do that is to encourage intermarrying and interracial relationships.
Yeah. Isn't one of the greatest ironies that with all this noise about Black Lives Matter, when you talk about the black father walking out of the relationship and leaving the mother with all these little kids, if black lives really mattered, wouldn't those black fathers stay with the woman and help raise those little black kids?
Fathers matter. Yep, exactly.
You know, that's a major problem they have in America.
Yeah. Well, let's take it to South Africa. One of the biggest problems in South Africa, you know, I've got some really, you know, when you start dismantling, I looked into Ruth Hall and started reading some of the PLAS NGO work on farms and stuff. And one of their big angles that they take, this NGO funded by George Soros, this angle that they take is to say, look how poor these rural black people are. Look how oppressed these rural black people are. Poverty is endemic because of the white man and how the white men have treated them. And it's like, wait a tick. The Zulu king owns 33% of KwaZulu-Natal's land mass.
Right, under that trust.
Right? Under that trust in Ngonyama. Not a single person who lives on tribal land has a property deed, a property title. You could, in one policy, create the hugest or the biggest wealth snap into existence transfer in the world by saying to every single black homesteader man who lives on tribal land, here's your little 1 acre plot, or even if it's a little 1/4 acre plot that his kraal is on, he has a title deed, sir. Now he can take a bank loan on that, he can sell it, he can he can now invest in his property with the secure that 3 generations from now his grandson is going to own this piece of property. You've just created something. So when we go back to black fathers and black culture, one of my biggest things with South Africa, you get a lot of these economists and these NGOs spouting off white privilege and white disparity and inequality of wealth to these poor black people. You know, I would, if I were a policymaker, I'd be an activist for policies that would, number one, create title deeds for black people in rural areas. Number two, I would put into law that you only have one wife and at most 4 children. You know, and a lot of people are like, oh, but Scott, they need a son, and then you're going to lead to China where they abort all the girls. And it's like, no. Like, you can put in law that they have at the most children they can have is 4 children with at least 1 boy. So if it takes them 10 children to get to 1 boy, that's fine. You can have 9 daughters and 1 boy. But at most have 4 children, including 1 boy. And then the third policy that you need to enforce is the abolition of lobola. Lobola is a reverse inheritance, right? So instead of the Bible says it is a righteous man who lays up an inheritance for his children's children. In the Zulu culture, the child goes and gets a job, and for the rest of his life, he's getting taxed by the government, and he's getting taxed by his own parents, and he's getting taxed by his future father-in-law. There's no way to build wealth because your money comes in and straight out it goes. And because they don't have title deeds on their properties, let's say, you know, because you could say, like, fine, I'm giving money to my father-in-law, and when he passes away, I get all that wealth back in inheritance. But he doesn't own the property. So, you know, those 3 policies could absolutely change black culture in 1 generation. But if you do that for 3 generations, have less than 4 children, abolish lobola, and marry 1 wife, you do that for 3 generations, and you are a first world country. You've changed your people's trajectory.
Right. Now, there's an interesting comment in the side chat I'll just relate to you. Willy Vermaak said, "Marriage is when a man loses his bachelor's degree and woman gets her master's degree."
That's really good.
Now, I want to touch on this Lobola situation because just a funny little tale. Fiona, who's she's written books and she sends me articles that I put up on videos, and she talks about that time back on their farm in the Natal Midlands near Nottingham Road, where her parents had, I think it was the third girl, and they didn't have any sons. And of course, they were really upset because they were looking for the son to take over the farm. And some of the African staff, when they heard that they'd got another girl, they said to the fellow, he said, "Oh, that's fantastic! You're going to get so much lobola for these three girls."
Huge lobola.
And he said, "No, it doesn't work that way. They're all going to cost me an arm and a leg when they get married." And the Africans couldn't relate to that at all. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally different culture, you know. And that's it, man. Like, it's okay to have different cultures.
Yeah.
Just stop blaming our culture for your culture's dysfunction or for your culture's unequal fruits to our culture's roots.
Don't you think the moral values, if we're going to be really basic about this, it's a different set of moral values that the general white community
Definitely.
have to the general black community in South Africa? Or
Yeah.
I guess elsewhere
definitely.
too.
Yeah, and again, I say that's okay. Like, it's okay to you know, I used to be Mr. Rainbow Nation. I used to be that guy who was like, you know, South Africa's the best, like, you know, South Africa's the greatest, and I felt this incredible pressure to make South Africa work. And, you know, so any like white guy who left for whiter pastures, I'd be like super betrayed. I'd be like, "You left, you traitor, like, you left." And then black guys who I'd gone to school with and gone to church with and lived with and played sports with started going into Leninist Pan-Africanism. And I was like, no, guys, like, and I felt super cut and betrayed because here I am trying to, you know, will the South African Rainbow Nation out of the ashes. And here's all these black guys abandoning ship. Here's all these white guys abandoning ship. And I'm the one left waving the little South African flag, feeling responsible for everybody. And so it was so great for me when I became a nationalist to let go of the empire that I have no authority over. A lot of people need to understand this. We do not have authority over America. We do not have authority over South Africa. They are empires that are controlled by people who are not your group. They're not your community. They're not your culture. And so we have no responsibility there, which means we have no authority there, so we are free from our responsibility there.
Right.
Where we do have authority is over our own life, our own family, our own property, and our own community, our people, the people who identify with us. And so therefore we should be very strong about putting our responsibility into that sphere that we can control. And this is where what you're saying about culture comes in. I couldn't care less if a Zulu guy wants to marry 4 ladies, have 30 children, not have a title deed, get stolen from, steal from, murder, get murdered. Like, just you do that over there in your community, and let me do white Christian Anglo community in my community, and we'll get on pretty fine. We'll get on pretty well. Yeah. And that's the problem with these multicultural empires, is they force the Zulu and the Anglo to have political power over each other and try and enforce.
Then you move to the lowest common denominator, don't you?
Exactly.
So the morality goes down to the lower level.
Yeah, and morality becomes survival, right? It becomes survival. And that's where, you know, instead of having a high trust neighborhood where the kids can all play outside and you can leave the door unlocked, there's something called like the transaction cost of high trust society, right? There's very little transaction cost, which means in a low trust society, there's a very high transaction cost. So if you're trading in a low trust society, you have to build extra fences. You have to build extra locked doors. You have to hire a cash transit van to transport your money. You have to pay for security. Right. The costs of running life and business go up, the more distrust and the more dysfunction we have in a society.
Well, I remember as a young bank clerk, I was about 18, 19 years old, and every week my job was to actually get a trolley and to take boxes full of money and walk down the street of Greytown, and everybody knew they were full of money, but it was safe.
Yeah.
And I would go to the local post office, which is about 500 meters from the bank. I'd go to the counter, I'd wait in the queue. I mean, I could have been held up, but no one ever, there was respect, but you couldn't do that today.
No.
Couldn't do that today.
And and that's it. That's my heart as a nationalist, Scott. I want to live in peace, man. I want to live peace. I want to live where I don't have to lock my door at night. I want to live where I don't have to build jagged glass on top of a 3-meter high wall around my house. I don't want to live where I have to worry about my wife who's alone for 2 hours at home.
Right.
I just want to live in peace. And what's happening in America, what's happening in the Christian West, I'm sure in Australia, is you're importing cultures that sow distrust and destruction and a chaos and a lack of peace. And then when the community leaders stand up and whoa, guys, we didn't vote for this, we don't want this, it's you're a racist, you're going to jail, you're losing your job, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. And I think that's where I'm so excited, is that the times are changing, and the there's nothing you can do to stop it mindset, they are freaking out because nationalists are rising up and saying, we will stop it. Yeah. And we will return to peace. We will return to order. We will return to tradition and godliness and morality and wholeness. And we will recover our roots, reconnect to our roots, and have meaning and belonging to our people again. I'm super pumped for the times ahead.
Right. Well, I had Dr. Peter Groenewald on the live stream about a week ago now, and what a awesome guy. I mean, just an amazing man. Now I just want to show everybody watching what I put on my wall in my office, just for a second. There, the old South African flag. It sits on my wall, and I can't believe that they call that hate speech. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. What are your thoughts about the way the South African Human Rights Commission are operating? Solidarity Research put out a booklet about a week ago where they compared the South African Human Rights Commission's decisions when it came to whites like Penny Sparrow, Vicky Momberg, and even think of Etzebeth. What's his first name? The rugby player.
Eben,
yeah, Eben Etzebeth. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible when you look at that compared to Malema, Zuma, and all these other people. There's no equity, is there? Now, I'm just going to have...
Some human rights are more important than other human rights.
Yeah, well, I want you to talk on that for a couple of minutes, because I need to go to the little boys' room. I'll be right back, okay?
Righty. Hello, Scott's audience. Direct, there's no priest intermediating anymore. Yeah, I think a lot of these things of human rights commissions and even the role of the UN, their role is to destroy Christian civilization. There is no care for human rights among Africans for each other. We just listened to the dear president ramble on about people raping and pillaging in the townships. That's not white middle class going out into the townships to go and be racist. There's these horror stories of these Afrikaner farmers killing guys and burying them on the farm every Friday. It's that happens once in 1,000, and the guy probably came to kill someone. It's so blown out of proportion, the evilness of being white. And so how do we deal with the evilness of being white? We set up a human rights commission that deals with the evilness that white has perpetrated upon non-white. So that's what I think of that. And you can take that meta-narrative and apply it to the UN, right? So the UN, fascinatingly enough, when they they call it the Afro-Asian bloc. But in this book with the Rhodesian guys, where they were struggling, is that the Afro-Asian bloc was once Asia and Africa started decolonizing and getting nativist governments in place.
I'm back.
They started forming. Hello, Scott. The priest has returned.
The priest has. Carry on.
I'm just equating the Human Rights Commission to the UN.
Oh, right.
And basically,
Yeah.
What happened was the Afro-Asian bloc started taking over because they had more votes. So they had more votes than the Anglo-Protestant or the Western Protestant bloc, if you want to call it that. And so the UN, it was set up it was set up for various purposes, but what it's told for everyone else it is a League of Nations to keep the peace. Well, how do we keep the peace? We've got to beat down the evil people. Who are the evil people? Whites.
Right.
And so you have this Afro-Asian bloc that pushes for restitution against white evil and white imperialism and all this stuff. So that's my thought on the UN. It's my thought on any human rights commission. It's always, what is the evil that they're trying to restitute against? And more often than not, the evil is whiteness.
Right. Now, tomorrow night, I'm going to be talking to a really interesting fellow. His name's Dennis. He's got a YouTube channel which is growing quite fast. I think his username is 00 Den or something like that. But the reason I'm talking about this is because apparently his father was an extremely wealthy man. In fact, a billionaire. And he was invited, because of his wealth, to be a member of an exclusive little group, which was called the Group of 300, apparently. And they used to get together and talk about world affairs and where the world was going and stuff like that. And his father was so appalled by what he heard that he actually just said, I'm not coming to one of your meetings, and he got out of there.
Yeah.
But what he learned, apparently, is that there are 13 families. Now, we talk about the Illuminati and we talk about the deep state and all those sort of things, but apparently there are 13 families who actually have a complete control over the 300. And amongst those 13 families, you've got people like the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, George Soros, etc., 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 who are basically the power behind the throne. Have you heard about that? Those two structures?
I haven't heard specifically, by that name or whatever, but I read a very insightful book that I think you and your audience probably may have read already. But it's called Killing Uncle Sam. I highly recommend this book. It's by a South African guy who lives in America, actually, Rodney Howard Brown. But he basically goes on a journey right from Cecil Rhodes in Africa through the the Rhodes Foundation into Britain's attempt at reclaiming the American empire through finance after they lost the Revolutionary War.
Right.
And, we are so out of touch with the scale of banking power, the amount of money that is moved, the amount, we always say, oh, the richest guy in the world is Jeff Bezos at 100 and something billion. It's like, no, there's many families who are not on that list who are many multiple scales above that.
Absolutely.
Who is America $25 trillion in debt to? Who are these other countries trillions of dollars in debt to? And so what happens is that banking, and if you look into the history of the Second World War, is that a lot of people don't actually know this, but Hitler kicked out the globalist bank that had instituted the Weimar inflation.
Right.
And what he did was he nationalized the bank and said, we're going to basically print our own way out of this. We're not going to borrow money and pay back money at interest.
It was like a labor token, wasn't it? You do so much labor and you got like a piece of paper that said you've done so many hours and that had a value. Wasn't that how it worked? And so
a lot of people say that the reason Churchill was so bullish about war was because he was in the pocket of one of these banking families.
Oh, right.
And a lot of people say like, Second World War was started over Poland. Poland was invaded. Well, what was the end of the war? Poland was invaded by Russia, and Poland never got their independence back. So it's like, if you say the war was started over Poland, Poland never got their independence back, and that was a false pretense for why the war happened. And then a lot of people would be like, well, it was for the Jews. The Jews were being exterminated. If you believe their reports, the Jews only started getting death camped in 1942 and onwards. So the war shouldn't have started in 39. So it's we go back to this thing of, you say, of families of 300, families of 13. Banking pulls so many strings that we don't know of. We chatted a bit about Bunker Hunt, and how one billionaire family tried to corner the market on silver.
Yeah.
And great, good on the guy. If he wanted to buy all the silver in the world, good on him. And then that's where probably another banking family came in and said, whoa, we're going to lobby the US government to put restrictions on the silver trade.
Right.
And they basically destroyed Bunker Hunt because he got outmaneuvered by another banking family or by another money family, basically.
He lost an absolute fortune on that.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't be surprised if he lost, 99% of his wealth.
I think he lost everything. I think he became basically broke.
Exactly.
Now, I just want to address the side chat. Guys, if you've got any questions you'd like to put to my guest, Scott Tungay, please just feel free to put them there. And the moderators, if we have had some questions that the guy's name is Udez, the fellow who talked about the 300. Now, just for the record, I've got Udez and his wife coming on tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Johannesburg time. So that's going to be an interesting discussion. Okay, if you've got any questions you'd like to ask Scott Tungay, please just put them into the side chat, and I'll post them to or ask Scott about them. Now, we've been really looking at this cultural thing, Scott, which I find quite fascinating, because let's face it, I look at the Fijian people. Okay, I've been to Fiji many times. I've often stayed in Fijian villages, and their culture is so different to let's say the Zulu culture. The Zulu culture seems to be built on fear. The whole thing is based around fear, violence. It's a very violent group or community. Whereas if you look at the black Fijians, their whole culture is based on peace, working as a family, as a community. The mothers and fathers, they never separate. I mean, they just stick together like glue, and they have these big families, and the whole village atmosphere is so stable. And
they play good rugby.
They play damn good rugby. Think of Lottie Takiri. He actually came from the village Namatakula, which is one of the villages I used to stay at. But culturally, even amongst the black groups, there are different cultural values and norms and stuff like that, and the same with the white communities. This is where I come back to the Afrikaans and the Boers. They have this incredibly strong belief system, and they were the group that the ANC was scared of when they took power. It wasn't the white English, it was the Afrikaners and the Boers, because of their culture.
And I think that's a hard thing to, it's a hard thing to reconcile for the worldview that we're brainwashed from birth with, which is like all cultures are equal, all people are equal, all religions lead to heaven.
Yeah.
And I can't explain. I can give you terrain explanation. So my explanation for Europe is that we basically went through a dark age where, we were very aggressive and fought each other, and we established boundaries, and then Christianity made its impact. And so there was Christian morality, and there were cold winters. So you had to plan ahead, and you had to develop in-group preference. You can say all of those things about terrain, because then you can take that to Africa, where like food is abundant everywhere. You never settle in one place. There's so much space that if another group fights you, you just move off. And so they never went into a dark age. They also never had winter to get long time preference. You can say those things, but it's like, how do you explain the Fijians? Because they have eternal tropical world, and they had tribal warfare, and
Yeah, they did.
they have a limited space.
They used to be
so
man-eaters.
Yeah, they used to be managers, and that's when you ask, like, okay, was the gospel more transformational on the Fijian culture than it was on the Zulus? Like, probably, but that's something I don't have the answer for, Scott. All I have the answer for is multiculturalism smashing together of disparate cultures.
Yeah, doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and that's what the media are trying to force us into. I think
And like,
what scares me about Black Lives Matter is it's glorified by the mainstream media.
Yes.
It's like, this is a huge breaking out. It's like the second coming. It's just absolutely ridiculous. It's so destructive.
Yeah.
And yet they don't ever say that.
Yeah, exactly. And so even, another thing to look at is like China, the Chinese, there's very, I've seen videos of them eating live animals, and I've seen videos of people being hit in traffic, and then just the person lies on the floor for, the whole video. No one comes and helps them. Like, there seems to be a lack of compassion in the Chinese culture, right? They're a very harsh culture.
Yeah.
Whereas in our Anglo-Protestant culture, we have a high level of compassion.
Right.
And so one of the things for me, and this plays into Black Lives Matter, because Africans have a very low level of compassion.
Right.
And what happens is you have this high trust, long time preference, a group of people who have a lot of compassion for each other. And now you move, Minnesota is the exact great example of this. Minnesota was settled by Scandinavians and Germans in America. They made Minneapolis their little city. And over the last 30 years, they've been flying Somali immigrants. So there's now a huge Somali immigrant community in the middle of the Scandinavian stock state, And so of course, the Somalians, they don't learn the language, they don't learn the culture, they don't learn the customs. They just have an enclave because that's what it is. And they've even elected a congresswoman to the federal Congress, because they stick together and they vote together and they do life together, and they just don't assimilate. But now, instead of all the Minnesotans saying, "Hey, wait a minute, we didn't vote for this. This is weird. Like, they don't assimilate. We don't like their culture.
Right.
Like, why are they here? They've got their own country, a huge country that they didn't sort out, and now they're coming here." Anyway, so all this stuff happens. What's the first city to absolutely burn? It's Minneapolis, right? And the next day, you see pictures of all these very compassionate Scandinavian stock Americans all cleaning up the city the next day from this riot. And it's like, guys, it's time we had in-group preference. It's time we said to people who don't like us, hey, this far and no further. Like, I'm locking my door at night.
You know what I think would be a perfect solution? We talk about the 4 million whites in South Africa who are feeling very, very uncomfortable in that boiling pot. I think the perfect solution is to have an exchange program where you have the 4 million whites moving to America, and those 4 million blacks who've got a real chip on their shoulder move to South Africa. And that way you'll solve all your problems, because that group will be out of America, and you'll have a group that is completely compatible with the majority population in America.
Only problem with that, Scott, is that it's not 4 million blacks. It's, if you look at the voting patterns of the blacks in America, it's 90% of their 30 million population votes liberal, votes I'm a victim.
They've got 30 million there.
I think somewhere between 15 to 30 million.
Wow, that's huge, isn't it? I hadn't realized it was that
many. And they're all under the liberal spell. 10% aren't, but it's that fellow, like, not all women, not all black people, and it's like, no, but the vast majority. We deal in generalities when it comes to politics, because that is how you govern, is with general morality, general rules. So if some group is voting 90%, that's not just a generality, that's a definite.
Yeah. Now, Philippe has just said in the side chat, multiculturalism is like a platonic relationship, kinky or impossible.
It's weird. No, but that's the way I look at nationalism. Is I look at nationalism as I'm married to one woman. I don't go and meddle with other men's wives.
Yeah, exactly.
And I say no to other men meddling with my wife.
Well,
and if I invite 20 other women into my house, that makes me an adulterer. And it makes my wife no longer my wife. It makes her just one of many.
Well, basically the Ten Commandments. I mean, that's the simple rule book, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Something we can all agree to and get behind and live by.
Okay, I'm going to start posting questions to you that I've received from people in the side chat. And X Factor says, where do you live now, Scott?
Yeah, so I'm up in the Drakensberg Mountains of Natal.
Are you back at the choir school, are you?
So we're next to the choir school. So my family sold the choir school in the 80s.
Right. Okay.
And then my family has a resort up there, and I've just come back to visit for the winter, which has turned into the South African winter.
You know, I love those thatch roofs in the Drakensberg, and I see you've got one. I mean, they are just fantastic. Tell me, is Champagne Castle Hotel still as beautiful as it always has been?
Yeah, they've done a really good job up there. My wife, before lockdown, my wife and I would go up there for tea time on their patio and have a scone, look at the mountains.
You are so lucky. I remember. Okay, I'm going to tell everybody a little secret about my life as a young man. I had my farm, which, as you know, is where all the hotels are. You've got Champagne Castle.
It's 5 k's down the road from me over here.
Yeah. You've got what's it called? El Dorado. What there was that?
El Mirador.
El Mirador. You had the Nest Hotel, all along that road. And I used to go up to my farm every weekend, and I was building a protea farm, and I was just slowly getting into it. And on a Friday night, I'd go and visit all these hotels and, sit down the bar and have a drink and see who was there. And if there was a nice girl there, I'd go up and have a chat. And I'd say, well, I'm actually a farmer in the area. And that was like, bang! Oh, really? And I said, yeah, well, would you like to come for a barbecue tomorrow? Yes, please! What an amazing...
That's still the tactic for all the farm boys here. It's still a tried and true tactic.
I bet it is. They learned well.
There you go.
No,
if it ain't broke, change it.
David Plett says, what is Scott working with in the US? Has he immigrated? Now, you're back in South Africa, but what were you working on when you were in the US?
Yeah, so my wife's American. She came over here on a mission trip, and that's how we met, and we got married. And obviously, I had to be over there for our whole visa thing. So I'm a resident of America. I'm not a citizen, and I've just been working as obviously I started just any old job I could find, and for the last year and a half, I was just managing a farm, stall, restaurant, butchery vibe. But my passion is actually coaching rugby. So I coached the university team for 4 years, and we were going to go back so I was in Kentucky for 4 years. And when we go back, we were looking at settling in Ohio, and wanting to make a go as a professional rugby coach, and also real estate I'm interested in. And so we closed up our life in Kentucky to come out here. Thankfully we did, with the whole Rona lockdown. But be starting afresh again when we go back over to Ohio.
So you'll be going back to Ohio, will you?
Yes, yeah.
Right. So have you actually got your green card or US citizenship?
That's right. Okay. Yeah, so green card for residence.
Yeah. No, I guess you got that because you married an American lady.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, immigration is such a complex thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a real shame, because I full on agree with very strict immigration laws, and as a nationalist, that's it. It's if you're going to move to another place, it's because you love the people and you honor them, and you're a guest of theirs. Yeah. And they have every right to kick you out or restrict your access. And man, we would show up at our green card interviews. We'd go to the little department of their kind of home affairs, whatever you call it there. But we'd show up for our appointments, and I'd be wearing a suit and dressed up smart, and my wife's dressed up smart, because it's like, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
And man, there'd be so many guys there just in pajamas and just slacking around, and they can't even speak English.
Wow.
It's like I felt dishonored, of like, you guys don't care. Like, you don't care about this country. You don't love these people.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I migrated to Australia, the first step was to go and see the Australian embassy. And I had an interview with I guess one of these immigration fellows from the Australian government.
Yeah.
And the first thing he said to me, he said, do you realize, Mr. Bolson, you can't go shooting blacks in the streets of Australia? And I thought, wow.
John, you've been doing that so much.
Oh, so I just said to him, look, I grew up in East Africa, but I realized that he treated everybody with the same sort of contempt. He's the sort of guy that rubs you up the wrong way in about 2 minutes flat. You think, what a prick. But because you want to go to Australia, you're nice and you're
sir, no,
compliant,
sir.
Exactly. But I saw him in November of that year. And because he was such a prick, I realized that no one would send him a Christmas card. Now, he had told us at the time of our interview that there was a 2-year waiting period. So, once you've actually applied, they would look through everything, and 2 years later, if you're lucky, you would get the entry visa into Australia. And I thought about this, and I thought, hey, master plan. And the smartest thing I ever did in my life was I walked into CNA, and I bought the nicest Christmas card I could find. And I inside I said, his name was Henry Google. I'll never forget that. I said to Henry Google, yeah, Google, what a name. No wonder he was such a prick.
Yeah.
And I said, thank you so much for everything you're doing for our application or our migration application. Then I carefully spelt out my name at the bottom, put it in an envelope and sent it off. No jokes. Middle of January. A few weeks later, I got a phone call from the Australian Embassy. Mr. Bolson, your application has been approved. This is when you got a 2-year waiting list. That one little Christmas card got me a fast track.
It shows you courtesy goes a long way. Those old tricks of writing people letters and thank you cards and courtesy, it works.
It certainly does. Right. Now, we've been going for nearly 2.5 hours, and unfortunately the first 20 minutes of that was listening to Mr. Hippo Eyes. But yeah, well, at least we know that there's nothing radical happening. Did he say that they're going to open up the health and beauty industry now?
From what I understood, yeah, and then non-contact sports and whatever. So I'm just going to wait for the message tomorrow morning. And
the 3 bullet points.
He's probably still talking if we shoot across to his life.
No, we're not going there. We'll lose everybody.
Yeah.
We got close to 200 watching right now, which is a good number. It's a manageable number. You must see my side chat when we go up to 1,000 people. It's just it's like a scrolling board. How do I catch what they're saying? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Now, is there something you would like to say to people who are watching this video now, or people who might watch the video later? Some message that you might have that you'd like to share? Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I really appreciate you having me on. And yeah, I think my biggest thing is just to encourage everybody that, number one, God loves you. Number two, He has a plan for your life. Number three, you were born for such a time as this. A lot of people are like, man, like why did we have to be here at this time? And we're afraid of hard times, but God knew that this is where you'd be, and He loves you and He has a plan for you. Now that plan is something that's in your heart that a lot of times you're like, man, I don't know what God wants me to do. I don't know what I'm here for. But God gives us passions, and he gives us gut feelings, and he gives us instincts, and he gives us a desire. And a lot of times the biggest thing for me is how we change the world is not to go into politics necessarily. It's not to try to do these huge, big things. It's with your own family, your own property, your own community,
Right.
your own passion, right? And so what I would just want to encourage everybody is, and even if you're an old fart, like you say, Scott, even if you're an old fart, man, like, what a better thing than to use this last 20 years of your life to go hard at a passion that you've always held dear to you, So what I say to people about passion is, what are the things you dream about? What are the things that if you had $100 million, you would want to go and do? What are the things that make you angry or make you sad? You really start to tug at your passions and just start journaling that with the Lord and be like, God, is this what you've made me to do? And to really go hard at that. I feel this is a season for us to really move away from consumerism and comfort and wage slavery.
Yeah.
And instead say, God, what did you make me to do? I want to go and do that and do it amazingly, serve my family, serve my community with my passions and my talents. And I think if we did that, if we built strong communities again, where people were passionate about life, passionate about the people they lived around, that would be another thing I'd encourage people is, if you're living in a city that you don't like, with people you don't like, pray and ask God for a small homogenous little town that you could move to and become a part of. We want to belong to somewhere.
Right.
So that would just be my message, Scott, is life is good. God is good. Now is good to be alive. Like, what a time to be alive. And the way we feel that is to serve a much more local scale of our life, and not to really get depressed about the things we can't control. But what are the things we can control? Let's go hard at that.
Absolutely perfect. As Winnie says, beautiful words. Thank you, Scott from the Drakensberg. Well, actually, we're both from the Drakensberg, but I left my heart in the Drakensberg too. But you have the joy of living there. Now, I just want to say that we're going to be shutting down the auction in a couple of minutes. So if you do want to make a bid, I think the top bid is 21,000 Rand by Layla. I think that that'll probably win. But what I'd like to do, Scott, is to ask you to say a prayer, if you wouldn't mind, to people watching now and people watching later, for South Africa and, for the community. Over to you.
Alrighty. Yeah, so Father, we love you. Holy Spirit, we love you. Jesus, we love you. And we humble ourselves before you, Lord. Your word says that if we would humble ourselves, seek your face, that you would heal our land. And Lord, I just thank you for all the nations that are trapped in this crumbling empire of South Africa. I bless them. I bless the Zulus, I bless the Xhosas, I bless the Sothos, I bless the Indians, I bless the Coloureds, bless the English, I bless the Afrikaans, I bless the many small nations that are trapped in this empire. And Father, I thank you that you love each one of them, that you made each nation with a redemptive purpose. And Father, I thank you that this grip that the enemy has over us is weak and is falling apart. And Lord, that you are raising strong men for each tribe and tongue. That, Lord, each tribe and tongue will bow before your name, and that you would strengthen them in this time. I thank you, Lord, that as we move into these hard times ahead, that strong men would be put into places of leadership, men that follow your heart, men that desire to know your voice. And Lord, that we would just be humble in your sight, Lord, that if you say go this way, we'll go that way. And if you say don't go this way, we won't go that way. And so, Lord, I just bless everyone listening tonight on Scott's channel. I bless just the calling you have on their life. I bless their families. I bless even just your, I feel tonight as well, just a moving into the next season for each of your lives as well, that the Lord would take you into new seasons. And that the Lord would just bless and give you favor And so, Father, we love you. We thank you that you love us. We thank you that life is exciting, that we get to do this with you, that you're not afraid, that you're laughing at the days to come. You laugh at our enemies. And so, Father, we just thank you for that joy and that hope that you give us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Beautiful. Now, I do have one final question for you, but before I just put it to you, I just want to congratulate Layla. The auction is now over. I believe her bid was 21,000 Rand. Malina, if you could just give Layla the Boere Droog to Help Charities banking details, that'd be fantastic. Okay, so John Smith has asked, what does Scott think of secession and small white communities like Orania?
Yeah, I'm all for it. So a lot of times people get very offended at the thought because they've been so brainwashed.
Yeah.
And what I say to this is always flip it around. If a small Zulu community, if a Zulu businessman decided to go and buy a huge farm and share block it, build a nice fence around it, and say this is a Zulu-only community, would you be offended? And I say most people wouldn't be offended. They'd be like, "Oh, great, good for them," And that's my same take on Orania. Good for them. Like they've taken their own law and order into their own hands. And I say that's a great idea going forward, especially with farmers. You've got land, but you lack safety, and so in the past we've seen a lot of farmers have kraals on their land. Why not invite white people from the city to come and settle a portion of your land, and now you have even the affluent and the middle class whites, is to move out to rural areas, go build tiny houses on farms or even nice houses on farms, and you're building strong communities. And I believe, so secession is great. Here's my problem with secession, is that we have no legitimacy, right? The ANC is not going to give up power until they crumble. So what you want to do, so secession, it's great. Go for it. Support all those organizations. Give them honor. But the more important thing is building strong communities, building sovereign infrastructure. We've got to copy the Jews. We've got to copy the Indians. We've got to copy the Greeks. Is that we've got to create small homogeneous communities all around the nation that are, even if everything else tanks, they're safe, they're economically viable, and they've got high in-group trust and preference.
Right. Okay, fantastic. All right. Thank you so much to the moderators who've been controlling the side chat. I see Marlena says that Layla's already made that payment to Boere Droog to Help. Thank you so much, Lally. Your support for these charities is really much appreciated. For those who've just been watching the video, I hope you've had a good time. I've had a fantastic time speaking to Scott, who, as I said, was probably named after me by his father, Russell. But that's another story for another day. And
you can claim it, that's good.
And for those of you who've participated in the side chat, thank you for doing that. And look, Scott, I have to tell you that it's a fascinating subject, and your angle about the cultural side and what's going on in the world, I think, is so on the money. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Scott. This was fun. Really appreciate it.
It was fun, and hopefully we'll have you back in the future.
Awesome. I'd love it.
Okay. All right, guys. Everybody, please take care. And I'm going to log out now. Don't forget, tomorrow night, I've got Udez and his wife, who are both going to be on. His wife has actually set up a new political party, which we'll be talking about. And, it's going to be an interesting evening. That's 8 p.m.